I'd like to call to order the Cohasset Select Board meeting for Tuesday, March 7th. As we normally want people to know at the beginning of this meeting, this is a live meeting, but it is also covered on Zoom. Participants who are on Zoom can also speak, but nobody else, if you're watching it on 4:3 or whatever, you will not be able to speak. But you are invited to participate on the Zoom platform, and there's a link on the town website, agenda, which will bring you right here. On a pure Zoom meeting, everything is taken by roll call, but because this is a live meeting, we will just be voting normally. Just be advised that this meeting is recorded and will be available to the public to watch. I'd like to start the meeting as we normally do with the salute to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Before we get into this, one of the and we will study public comment. We will do that in a second. One of the things that we are allowed to do in special circumstances, if something happens and there's not 48 hours notice, we can put it on the agenda if it's deemed necessary. And we have an issue that came up, and I believe, and as a chair, I would say it does meet the 48-hour standard of importance.
Mr. Chair, should we do roll call before we get into that?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay,
Thank you. Roll call, Cory.
Cory is here.
Diane.
Diane Kennedy here.
Paul.
Already.
Being heard and presented.
Jack Creighton here. Thank you. What we're going to do is we're going to discuss this matter. If it can be resolved fairly easily, we may or may not, for the discretion, vote on it. If not, we may have to go into executive session. And the issue has to do with the Attorney General, that's reviewing the navigation bylaw. And the Attorney General's office spoke to our attorney this afternoon, and they have requested an additional 90 days to review the issues raised by our bylaw, because it's been back and forth constituent. So if the board wishes to say, well, that's okay, we can do that. If the board wants to discuss in depth, then we would postpone it and we would speak later and discuss this in executive session. There's thoughts and discussion from the board.
I would recommend that we just schedule for next week or even Thursday or Friday, 40 hours, if you deem that it's necessary to do it. Let's post it and let's have a regular session on it. It's very easy.
Okay, what they have asked is just a 90-day extension. We could agree to grant that without discussing it, but if we want to discuss it, we can do it.
I just haven't seen anything on it, so I just.
Okay. James?
I would be comfortable saying, okay, we're going to turn agenda. If they need the time, I think we should give them the time, but, or like, bring back a session on that, that's fine. I think we just want to make sure we do it very soon because we want to get a response.
Did we get a response? I haven't heard a thing.
There's no response. The only thing is, they said they're going to need another 90
They
days.
contacted our attorney.
Okay, I would just ask Chris or the town manager office if there's some sort of communication with town council that is. Okay. Okay, no documentation, no anything, so I really don't know what we're talking about.
Paul?
I'm fine doing that. So we get it done as fast as possible.
Diane?
I am as well, and most specifically, because I don't think going in to discuss whether we should grant another 90 days review by the AG is, worthy of an executive session, so. I think it's literally just, are we willing to discuss it now? With respect to the 48 hours, and discussing it now at the beginning of this agenda, is there, I wonder whether there's a deadline, like, are we supposed to get back? And I mean, that's why we're bringing it up in that way. Maybe next week.
I think it's because, they have not requested any immediate action. This is our attorney telling us, the attorney with the Attorney General's office, if they're just letting them know that they want, they're going to need another 90 days, is that okay? So there's no discussions back and forth, there's no issues being brought up, just, and this is very common in the legal world, as we all know. The attorney calls up and says, hey, listen, we need a continuance or whatever. The email that I got from our counsel just said basically what I just said, there's nothing substantial to discuss. And we can have another executive session, if people feel there's discussion, but what has been requested is, and our attorney wants it. It's okay with that, but do we want to just give 90 days, or do we want to have executive discussion? So, does that satisfy your concern?
No, still.
Okay, fine. Okay,
That we grant, that we, let the Attorney General know that we're going to grant the next 90 days.
we have a motion made and seconded that we notify our attorney to notify the Attorney General's office if we are okay with the 90-day extension. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Nay. Nay. Shall let the record show that it was 4-1. Corey Evans was opposed. Okay, now moving on to the meat of the meeting. It's our custom to allow members of the public to speak to the town and the select board. Anything brought up here will not be discussed later on in this meeting. It may or may not be on the agenda later on. And I see Mr. Pratt.
Yes, Glenn Pratt, speaking on behalf of the Veterans Memorial Committee. As many people know, last week, the first Cohasset serviceman in 54 years died in the line of duty. And as the town has done for all of the servicemen that have died in the last 125 years, we name a park or a location or something in Cohasset for their memory. So we would like to ask you to put a placeholder article at town meeting so that at the meeting we can come in and propose to the town a location that we think would be a fitting memorial for Chief Michael T. Hurst.
Thank you. Again, our lack of action on this doesn't mean we're taking a position. It's just under the open meeting law. We would take this, and I think we can probably figure out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I think it might be appropriate for us all to have a moment of silence for our fallen townspeople. Okay, moving on, the Carriage House Nursery School. These spaces fundraising Friday, April 28th, 2023, one-day liquor license. Is there anybody here from Carriage House?
Mr. Chair, I don't see anybody in the audience from Carriage House at this time. If you are from Carriage House, if you could just identify yourself by putting your hand up or putting your thumb up. If you're not listed.
Does anybody have any background on this?
believe it's in your packet.
I know, we read it in the packet. Then, select board members have any comments?
They've been fundraisers in the past, I mean, it's Carriage House, so I've got no issue moving this along. So we're fine.
This is to approve a one-day liquor license.
That's correct, it's fundraising, yeah. So I'll make a motion, I move that we approve the one-day liquor license for the Carriage House Nursery School on 4/20/2023, between the hours of 6:30 and 10 p.m. Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to approve the Monday liquor license for Carriage House Nursery School for Friday, April 28th, 2023. Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Voting in favor. Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, next on the Classic Youth Baseball Association Annual Parade, April 29th, 2023. This is somebody here.
Right, yes, I'm Vince Thornton, president of the CYBSA. And we're requesting a permit for single day, opening day parade as we traditionally do from where we have the march from the common to the baseball fields.
Anything you'd like to tell us? Any questions or any questions from the board?
Happiest day of the year. That's all off. I'd make a motion to approve the Little League parade event on April 29th from 10 a.m. to 9 a.m.
Second.
We've got a motion made and seconded to approve the CYBSA Annual Parade, April 29th, 2023. Made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Have a good season.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next on the agenda, the MS Walk for Saturday, May 6th, 2023. Is there anybody from the MS Society to speak to this?
We do, Mr. Chair, Lexi Smith is up on Zoom.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. So this is a walk that we've been hosting for 15 plus years in Cohasset. We have a new start finish line this year due to the high school's testing schedule and athletics. So we'll be at Deer Hill Elementary School, and we already have approval from them. Our route is mostly the same as it would have been last year if we hadn't had to cancel due to extreme weather. So we're taking them down Sohere Street from the school. And our water stop will be at Lawrence Wharf, and we'll have about 190 participants.
Thank you. Any comments from the board?
I make a motion.
Second.
Paul made a motion, Paul Brady, to approve the MS Walk for Saturday, May 6th, 2023. Did you second that? Oh, Diane seconded that, made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We will see you back in Cohasset soon.
Thank you.
Okay, next Echo Festival for Saturday, May 20th, 2023. Involves a one-day liquor license and an entertainment license. Is anybody from Echo Festival?
Yes, we do have Marissa Mann. She's popping up right now.
Matt Elder, founder of Untold Brewing, is possible one day with the license. So, I'll say that. Marissa.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. I don't know, is Mike Elder should be on as well from Untold.
Yep, that's it.
Perfect. Same, you're in person. Okay, great. So last year we organized our first inaugural EcoFest. I think many of you were there, and it was a wildly successful event. We think we had over 1,000 people attend, and we had 32 vendors that were able to showcase how to be local, how to be sustainable, and a lot of nonprofit organizations were there as well, some from other towns, to also build and foster that community aspect as well. So this year we're looking to do similarly with a few minor modifications based off of some of the learnings that we had from last year. We are looking to move it to a Saturday from Friday. So our plan is to have it Saturday, May 20th on the Common from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. So moving it a little earlier in the day as well. Last year we were cleaning up in the dark, which wasn't so great for us. And we are also hoping to ask for approval to use both sides of the Common if we need it. We want to potentially add some more vendors this year from other communities on the South Shore, as well as expand our activities and offerings for families and children. So we're looking to potentially add a puppet show with an environmental story and likely have Mama Steph come. And also we've been working with some of the green teams at the high school and a few other high schools on the South Shore to also come up with some games and activities for families to keep them engaged as well. And so in addition, like we had last year, we will have a few food trucks, and we're also hoping to get Untold to have their beer garden again as well.
I see Chief Quigley is here. Do you have any comments, Chief?
No, I've been working with Marissa for the past several weeks, and everything seems squared away. All of her paperwork is in. We've had a conversation about Untold Brewing in coordinating off an area. They have detailed offices. She's coordinating that with our traffic folks, and I think we're all squared away.
Any comments for the select?
So two things. Matt, did you submit the liquor app already?
It's,
Did we receive that? She's not in the packet. Can you just confirm we got that?
Chief, did we have that?
If it's, if we received it, we're good. I'm sure we got that.
Liquor is a different division. That's Tracy.
Yeah, we've got the event for it, but it's the liquor license for Untold. And the only other thing is that during that last event, you had the two people at the station, but people just kind of went out the backside and you had interview all over the Common. Do you have enough? Can you get us a staff member on the other side of the corn golf area?
oh, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So, I see that in the second block.
That's what you got.
Yeah.
Diane?
I just have to bring up last year, there was a, one of the vendors was a whiskey bar, and it was fantastic, and technically you don't need a liquor license if you're giving out liquor samples. However, that I think led to a lot of people walking around town, honestly, with red cups and drinking alcohol and not within a contained area, and I think it was a disadvantage to the Untold Brewing, frankly. So I just want to make sure whether that's, now, whether that's part of the plan or not.
Yeah, so I think you're referring to the Noble Oak Distillery. They have approached us that they're interested in being a part of EcoFest again, although they certainly don't have to offer samples. They can just showcase how they're a sustainable business and that they plant a tree for every bottle, and they can provide a listing of where one can purchase their whiskey as well.
I think the board wants to, I think it's a good point, Diane. I think the board might want to consider whether we want to have a festival which has people with red cups of liquor and wine.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Chief has his hand up.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, I'd request that they not allow free samples. I'm not sure that that's even legal in this situation. Not the best idea.
We're fine with accommodating that.
Thank you.
Just a clarification, Chief, that they don't vend at all, because I mean, I do think there might be another level of license if they're selling the whiskey too, so.
Giving it away gets really dicey. You can do it inside like a liquor store, with the manufacturer, but on the Common, I'd have to really research that with Jim Lamke. But my initial reaction is that's illegal.
All the comments from the board about.
I mean, beyond that, even if it is legal, it's a bad idea. I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, well, I think we might be coming to that. Before. Does anybody feel we should allow or even consider it or just?
I would make a motion to allow for the Fest from May 20th, 2023, noon to 8 p.m. We probably have to do each license separate, and so I would make that motion add to the liquor license for Untold Brewing with the understanding that there will be none of the noble unless you come back with the appropriate license, having license request having consultant issue.
Have a motion made and seconded to approve the liquor license with the exception of free liquor comes. Simplified.
Just a clarification on the motion, it's just the liquor license for.
Yeah. Okay, we've had a motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Entertainment.
Yes, I would make a motion for entertainment license for the Eco Fest, May 20th, 2023, 8 p.m.
Second. We have a motion made and second for entertainment license for the Eco Fest for May 20th, 2023. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, abstention, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda, farmers market, May through October. They want an entertainment license.
Mr. Chair, I think I'm presenting for the farmers market, folks, this year, that there's a scheduling conflict. So Michelle, Hubie reached out to me and I spoke to her and her husband. That this is no deviation from previous years. They're looking at starting the second week in May, it appears. All their paperwork is in there, the insurance, and they know the ground rules. So this is a very standard, request. And she sends her request that she couldn't make it, but something, there was a conflict.
Any questions from the board? Any comments from the audience? Chair would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the farmers market license for the 2023 season, starting on June 8th, 2023 through October 5th, 2023 on Thursdays from 12:30 p.m. to 6:30.
Second. We have a motion made and seconded to allow the entertainment license for the farmers market May through October. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, abstention, motion carries unanimously. South Shore Arts Center has their festival coming up. They'd like a one-day liquor license for their preview party on June 10th, 2023. Is anybody here to speak to that?
Patrice May, Executive Director of South Shore Arts Center. I come before you for the 6th year that I've been here as Executive Director at South Shore Arts Center, and the 4th time I've come for festival. We had a pandemic pause. The festival preview party is usually the day before festival kicks off. It's usually on a Thursday. We have separated it out and we're holding it at the Art Center this year for myriad reasons, including Wi-Fi, and our featured artist really needs to be installed in situ. So it's a large scale photographs. It is Carrie Walensky, National Geographic photographer, and he used to collaborate with 3 identical triplets, which in itself is pretty awesome. And they have these 7-foot photographs that will be installed at the Art Center. We hope folks can come. So we're looking for a liquor license for that.
Is there any chiefs, any issues?
No issues whatsoever with this. It's contained within the Art Center, and they know the rules.
Any comments from the select board, Diane? Well, I know that you're very close to me. Okay.
Motion that we approve the
the Thursday, June 16th liquor license for the Social Arts Center?
That should be Saturday, June 10th.
Oh, I'm in the wrong permit
For the
that year. Sorry, I'm looking at 2022.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Saturday, June 10th, 2023.
Sure, you're not looking for second.
It's the same.
Okay, we've had a motion made and seconded, liquor license for Saturday, June 10th, 2023. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
I will stand up for the next one.
Forward. Moving for the South Shore Art Festival, June 16th to the 18th, 2023, 3-day liquor license, the 16th to the 18th
Yes.
June.
So, as last year, we piloted a smaller beer tent. This year, we're partnering with Marty Block, who also partners with Matt Older. So it won't be just Untold, it will be a little bit, that's why we're asking for a full liquor license, it'll be beer and wine. The reason that we're partnering with Marty Block, he owns the Greenbush General Package Store and the Norwell Package and General Store. He does Norwell Days and Heritage Days in Situate, and I'm very impressed with the fencing and with the policing. You know, the checking and the enclosures are excellent. So he is committed to doing that. We do call attention to the fact that the hours are slightly longer. Due to the fact that we're having this, we'd like to have our music go for 1 hour longer than we have in the past. So Saturday, we're looking for from 1 until 8. Saturday, 1 until 8, and then Sunday, 12 until 6, rather than the 5 o'clock. We have also extended our trolley to accommodate and ensure that people who are staying late at the festival still have a way to get back to their cars. As usual, we have reached out to the South Shore Music Circus for overflow parking, as well as to the Deer Hill Schools, should there be an event. But the Music Circus doesn't have their slate of performances yet, so I don't know how that's gonna look. We will be having food vendors. Corey, I have reached out to some local people. Fresh Feast will be one of our purveyors, and I know that was a question last year.
Yes.
We've also reached out to Mom on Go, which is already approved at the farmer's market, and Surf Dogs has already gotten their approval through Pam Fahey, and then Nona's and Dells will be the rounding out the food. And then the rest of it will be about 50 craft exhibitors, and 400 pieces of art.
And kettle, right?
The California is definitely
You
coming.
mentioned
I forgot the California's definitely in the works.
Thank you.
contingent on kettle.
Yeah, it's all contingent on, I'll remember that.
So I just want to clarify so we can get the motion straight. So there's an event permit, which is the first thing we need to deal with. And then there's the 3 one-day beer and wine license, liquor licenses.
And then we also put in an entertainment license.
Entertainment license. And the only thing I want to just check with the chief is this didn't have a sign off from the event committee. So I just want to.
Yes, we did meet. She's good to go with DPW, Board of Health, Fire Department. Some of these things will come together, you know, as we get closer to the event. It's, you know, it's a work in progress, but you know, generally they're all set. They have everything they need, and we have all the insurance forms, and it should be smooth.
And then just Patrice, the only question I have just in terms of how the beer tent or beer garden will be set up, like we were talking about for Eco Fest.
Yes. So I don't know if any of you have been to Norwell Days or Heritage Days. Marty Block has fencing that he has had fabricated, and it's very impenetrable. So it's not like what we had last year where we were probably figuring it out. Last year was a transitional year. That one, we're much more organized. And just to clarify, last year at this time, we were just making the decision to have an in-person festival. So we're 6 months ahead of the game this time. But he has fencing that he will put in. It won't hurt the ground. It's made for the soft surface of the grass. So he's not going to bring up the sod or anything. It is going to be a big section, and we will have tables inside.
Any other comments?
Just to show my human side, I was having a beer in the beer garden and I saw a friend and I like literally went under. just saying, and I ran across it, I was like, that's so.
So I assume you'll, keep up with security.
Yeah, well, you won't be able to do that this year then.
That's a good thing, I need controls. I'll move that we approve the, event application for the 67th Annual Social Arts Center Arts Festival. I guess because of the setup, the week leading into the weekend of the 17th and the 19th.
So. We have a made and seconded to approve the festival from June 16th through the 18th, 2023. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, abstention, motion carries unanimously. Now we'll go to the 3-day liquor license.
Oh, this is Don still. We're still voting on it.
I'll move that we approve the one-day liquor license is for Friday, June 16th, 2023 to 1 p.m. as well as a license for Saturday, June 17th, 2023 to 11 to 8 p.m. as well as the one-day liquor license for Sunday, June 18th, 2023 to 12.
Okay, we've had a motion made and seconded to approve the 3 one-day liquor licenses for 6/16, 6/17, and 6/18, 2023. Any discussion from the board? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion carries unanimously. All right, now, one more. Entertainment license.
I move that we approve entertainment license for the Social Arts Center Art Festival from June 16th to June 18th, 2023.
We had a motion made and seconded to approve the entertainment license for the Social Arts Center from 6/16 to 6/18. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, abstention, motion carries unanimously. Now you may sit down.
Thank
Looking
you.
for what you stay in this.
I'm all good. You have a great night, all. Thank you so much. I'll see you in June.
Yeah.
If not before.
Cohasset Historical Society, the annual claim.
It's Glenn Pratt. The society for many years, every 2 years, ran a major fundraiser, which is Clam Bake at Sandy Beach, which is pretty popular. We got sidetracked for a couple of years with COVID. We ran it last year and we're planning on running it again this year. So what it is the beach lets us use one section near their beach house. And we've cordoned it off. It's a private event. We have a stage there with a band. And caterer comes, cooks up lobsters and all the things that go with it. And everyone presumably has a good time because they buy another ticket next year. So that's what we're looking for here.
Any comments, Chief?
Nope, Glenn got all his paperwork in at the last moment yesterday, and we're good to go.
Any discussion from the board? Any discussion from the community? Chair would entertain a motion for the liquor license, and then we'll do a second for the entertainment.
I would move to allow one-day liquor license for the Cohasset Historic Society on September 9th from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Motion made and seconded to issue a one-day liquor license for Saturday, June 9th, 2023. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion carries unanimously. Move on to the entertainment license.
I make a motion to an entertainment license at Sandy Beach on September 9th from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. So Glenn, I think you want a little bit earlier, is that right? That's like a bit earlier in the day for the entertainment license.
Which license?
The entertainment one, you want to start that a little?
No, it should be at the same time. I don't know how.
Okay.
Yeah.
From 4 to 8.
4 to 8, yeah.
Motion made and seconded to issue an entertainment license for Historical Society for Saturday, September 9th, 2023. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, now moving forward to the sidewalk committee, the final interviews and appointments. Paul, do you have any suggestions, or, and are there people who have applied who are here? In the audience? Justin, is anybody raising their hand?
Mr. Chair, we do have one person, Julie Rollins, is that something?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Would you like me to promote?
Yes. Hi, Julie. Thank you for staying interested in that. Can you give us an idea of who you are and where you live and why you want to be on the sidewalk?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity to meet with you all tonight. My name is Julie Rollins, 12 Hugh Strain Road. That is in the King Pond Street area of Cohasset. I've lived in Cohasset going on almost 9 years now. I have 3 children in the Cohasset Public Schools. I currently serve on the Cohasset Recreation Commission. I'm also part of a field study and improvement subgroup with that commission. Professionally, I'm employed by UNC Chapel Hill School of Medicine. I manage an NIH grant that examines environmental effects on children's health, which includes the built environment, community, connectivity, and physical activity levels. And I applied for this particular position on the sidewalk committee because I really would like to support our town in maximizing opportunities for residents to navigate safely around our town. I'm also committed to ensuring as many kids as possible can safely connect via sidewalk to Cohasset Public Schools. And this past summer, I began working with Senator O'Connor's office to start to try to make some improvements to the intersection at Pond Street in 3A, which is currently a bit of a trouble area in our neighborhood. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay, is there any questions from the audience? Justin?
I'm none on Zoom.
Anybody in the room? Thank you very much. Okay, do we have anybody else who is on the list, who is here?
I don't have anybody with their hand, Mr. Chair.
Paul, would you like to kind of update us on where we are?
Well, we've got 3 openings right now. We've got 3. It's wrapped up as soon as possible. So we've got Julie, thank you very much for applying. I don't know if you're still here. One thing was in there, so Joe. To the Yeomans, Abigail Al. And we now have Bill Barnett, Jonathan Murray, and Ralph.
So we need 3 more.
I just had one, this is kind of procedurally, there were 3 other applications and then, that put their name in and they're not here tonight. And then when we discussed it last week, I just want to make sure that they had an opportunity. They were invited to be here tonight. Tracy, you can send them. Okay, all right.
She did send it.
Yeah, she did. So I think what we're looking at, all of you agree, is Julie's candidacy and then the 5 people we spoke last week. So we have 6 applicants for 3 slots.
Abigail. Then you.
Bob Mulhall, and Frank.
Right, and Bob Mulhall.
I've got a slate potential, just been, one of the things we talked about was geography.
Yeah.
And both Julie Rollins and Tori were both actually both putting on resumes, so I feel bad that we can't not taking advantage of both their skill sets, but we did make it explicit geography that kind of carve out here. So distributing all the candidates, I would move the slate, I'd recommend a slate of Mr. Bob Hall, Ms. Abigail Hobson Alves, and Cynthia Yeomans as the 3 remaining members based on the geography.
And I mean, somebody want to second that?
Sorry, I failed to explain.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bob was end of Main Street, Ms. Hobson Alves was Stockbridge Street, so end of Elm, and then Cynthia Yeomans was at the preserve. So that kind of gave us, we still didn't have a Beechwood candidate, but Mr. Compar represents West Corner, Tory was King Street, and then Mr. Burnett followed Beach Street, so that gives us. I mean, Cohasset is kind of hard to distribute, but it kind of gives us a pretty good play.
Before we were at covered Beechwood area as well, because she would navigate, she would navigate down the.
That's correct.
Beach, so
Yeah,
that's,
okay.
that one, that was the one stuck up the plate.
Any other? Are you gonna, well, let's discuss that, and you want to make that motion tonight?
Yeah, that's my motion. So,
We have a motion made in second, is there a second?
I would like to just discuss one other person. I think I agree with Bob on please on geography, Cynthia Owens as well. I think just because, you know, there's always discussion about whether we need sidewalks on 3A. And I think that having that voice is important. And I was looking at Frank Zacchetti, maybe in lieu of Abigail, only because he is young little kids, dog walker, who lives in the Pleasant Street kind of village area, and you know, and just also with demographics, you know, I want to get more people involved that aren't already on committees. So I would recommend that we consider Frank in lieu of Abigail. I mean, this is tough because everyone brings different things in addition to geography. I thought Julie was very impressive, including in light of her professional experience, but also reaching out to state representatives, which is really going to be important for helping us connections on 3A. You know, if you want to build anything on 3A, including to connect to the preserve, that's the right approach, is to reach out to Senator Palmer and our elected representatives, and she's already doing that. So I give her a lot of credit for that. And, you know, being sort of having the foresight to do that. I thought Frank was, Mr. Chivetti was also very impressive in terms of the way he's already been thinking about describing these issues, including some of this is traffic calming and safety. It may not even be sidewalks necessarily. There could be another engineering or police aspect to it, and he again was thinking about this in a more holistic, I think, cost efficient way that we're going to need on the sidewalk committee. So I'd be strongly in favor of Frank. I understand that I will lean towards Julie, but I understand we already have some representation in that area, and then, you know, if people feel strongly about Cynthia or Bob, I'm fine with the direction.
Are we, can we expand the number?
Put it on the date, I mean, my take on it is at this point. Mr. Chiquetti. Small hall. At this point. Just because we're reaching out to parcel recreation, so there's a couple of T's crossed and I's dotted, and what each other said on the ponds are, but at least he's trying to have. To draw. I know we all pick up.
I would just, I know that Vice Chair of Capital, and Mr. Chiquetti, we're talking to his CPA experience. I don't know if that went anywhere. Frank might have skills for multiple committees, which is not a problem. But that's just a little bit of context right there.
Well, I think Abigail brings strength as well. That's the dilemma. I mean,
She does, but there's also the, that we need to resolve. You know, thank you.
We can't make it all.
Yeah, we can't be, so, I mean, and again, I appreciate what Blue Jet, it's what you mentioned at the last meeting. If there's a move of stuff, well, that's, we're gonna lose that. And they have to step back.
If you got a slate fall, it's your, we follow you.
Any reports, Mr. Chiquetti, Mr. Mohall, and right now, Ms. Rollins, and I'm saying that because Abigail, she brings a lot to the table, Parks and Recreation, 10 years, no going around it, but I like the fact that Ms. Rollins, his kids are right now in the system. She's worked with Parks and Recreation, because she's reaching out to Senator O'Connor's office. That's my thought, and Mr. Mohall, so names kind of require big stretch.
If I recall the charge correctly, one of the bridge spots actually is for open space / rec. So Ms. Collins actually could fill the rec position given when she's on the end. And then we have two open spaces.
They've got one side of the space around, so she currently had a new space around, she's for that.
So she's.
She's under commission. Is that right?
Did you leave? Wasn't it?
Were you?
She's under recreation.
Would you like to vote her back?
She can hear us, right?
She can,
Oh,
yes.
good. Thank you so much.
She's still there.
So is she on recognition or? on space?
She's on recreation.
Okay, so that's, okay.
So would that leave us? We still would be a huge bill.
I would,
That takes one.
I would suggest that we fill the slate that you want to fill, Paul, and that if the board is going fine, we can amend the open space and rec to the recognition next week on charge. Open space. The substantive point is that we wanted someone to represent that constituency, which I was uncomfortable having the recognition.
That's the one that I like them all. Don't get me wrong. I do appreciate preserve.
So what are we,
I can make the motion with Frank Chiquetti, Bob Mohall, Julie Ross.
Oh, she's here. She is in the audience.
okay, we made a motion to, Julie, Frank, and. who's the other one?
Mr. Mohall.
Made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. And to the people who are having the ring. Thank you very much. And by the way, we have that we'll be here. Okay, moving on, and thank you, Paul. Well, thank Diane. Thank Corey. And I see our scouts representatives are here, and they just see what the government. So you too can go into important issues like the select board. Or anyway, Eagle Scout project. Look and feel, hang out. Shed. And who is?
Okay, I'm Haley Cody and I'm a freshman.
Can you get stand up toward the mic, stand up close to the mic, that'd be awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Identify yourself with your name.
Okay, address. Okay, I'm Haley Cody and I'm from 29 Norfolk Road. And I'm a freshman class in high school, and my project, my Eagle Scout project, is going to be the baseball dugout improvements. The proposed improvements are we're going to repaint 2 of the dugouts, and we're also going to repaint the storage shed. The location of these are Milliken Field, which is right by the school. And the people who are benefiting is the baseball team, school, students, baseball players, and taxpayers. the cost estimate, we've actually rounded down to about 1,500 now. And it's because we have to paint about 1,500 square feet with paint, blue, white, and gray, and then we have to get various supplies. Oh, and we're gonna attempt to get discounts from Hingham Lumber and Lowe's. I'd like your permission to pursue this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you have to stand up here. Maybe you have a question.
Okay.
But probably pretty thick. Well, any comments, questions from the board?
You say you're a freshman
Yes.
and you're already getting to Eagle Scout. You've done some serious work.
Yeah.
You're showing that very nicely done.
Thank you.
That's a lot of stuff to do and that's.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Well,
I'd make a motion to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you.
made a motion to approve the Milligan Field Dugout project. Eagle Scout project. Made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I just had one
Yes.
question, which is because you're working on town property, are you being sponsored by anybody at town hall or sort of who's helping oversee it from the town point of view? That's all good. I want to make sure you get the support that you need.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Congratulations.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions. Congratulations, thank you. And as always, the Eagle Scout masquerade, without the work of the adults, these would not be possible. So if you would stand.
Well, here I'm representing Haley as our Eagle Scout advisor. I'm the Scoutmaster of Troop 28, which is the boys troop. Haley is part of Troop 48, the 4-year-old girls troop in town, of which her mother is one of the Scoutmasters of the troop.
Well, I think the model, could you stand? We're giving everybody. Well, one of the things is the board really is aware that a lot of the good things that are done with our kids require a lot of community support, and a lot of adult volunteer support. So we always want to say thank you to you, and you should thank you. They do good work. But congratulations.
Thank you.
Eagle Scout is a big part at that age.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I believe that Cohasset just had its first girls/women Eagle Scout.
That's correct. 3 weeks ago, Nora Elwell received her Eagle Scout rank along with her brother, William Elwell, same night. So luckily Nora was kind enough to let William go first.
Well done.
I also think on a per capita basis, Cohasset has way more Eagle Scouts than most communities.
Fair number.
Congratulations to the leadership.
Yeah, thank you very much. So close to 30 for myself under my tenure. So, and Glenn Pratt, my esteemed colleague here in a number of different categories, is an Eagle Scout himself.
However, that was only 63 years ago that I got mine. So.
We weren't gonna ask you.
That's the last time I got.
Thank you.
And just to recognize another scout in the back, Paul Chapman, he's one of our current scouts, so are you here doing a requirement? He's doing a citizenship requirement here tonight, observing, so we're all around.
And I see his brother is there with everybody, anybody else in here?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. School facility. Committee. Greg, you want to?
People have another time to email.
I'm gonna sit because I'm here for a few minutes.
No, you can stand.
You want me standing, Jack? This is the microphone, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just.
Mr. Schreier, there's also the superintendent of schools, Pat Sullivan, needs to be promoted as well as the chair of the school committee, Lance Dial. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Miss Leary, did you send him the PowerPoint deck so he can share that? Okay, great, thank you.
Are we all set here? Justin, could you get Ms. Campbell on the camera?
And he can just bring up the presentation. So I'll just begin. My name is Craig McClellan. I reside at 8 Rustic Drive. I'm here as a representative of the School Facilities Committee. I also serve on the school committee as vice chair and the long-term financial planning committee here in Cohasset. With me is the chairperson of appearing virtually, the chairperson of the School Facilities Committee, Jason Earls, the chairperson of the school committee, Lance Dial, and the superintendent of Cohasset Public Schools, Patrick Sullivan, Dr. Patrick Sullivan. I'm here to present a request from on behalf of the School Facilities Committee. And I'll go through this PowerPoint deck fairly quickly. It's really just a foundation for some talking points. I know I'm allotted 25 minutes, so I don't plan to take any more than that. So that's the request as it's currently drafted. The School Facilities Committee is requesting a warrant article that appropriates $1.5 million for the purpose of feasibility study for the Cohasset Middle High School. What a feasibility study is, you can go to the next slide, please, Mr. Chair. It's an in-depth analysis of all things related to the current facility. The site that stands on. Yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt. I can't see the slides on the screen. I don't know if anybody else can.
Okay, thank you for letting us know.
There you go. Okay, sorry.
Maybe you can switch to slideshow mode, Mr. Chair. You can hit that little picture. Yeah, there you go. You know how to do it. Okay, great. Oh, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe not.
I think if you go back to where you had it, you could just
Yeah,
go through it that way.
he's gonna do that. Yeah, that was my fault. I didn't realize he had already tried that.
Nope, it's the lovely world of Zoom sometimes.
All set? Okay. So as I was saying, feasibility study essentially, first of all, it's a first necessary and important step in determining what our long-term financial, or excuse me, solution will be for the middle high school. And it's an in-depth analysis of, I mean, I think everyone here is familiar with what a feasibility study is. It looks at the current site, all elements of the current building, structural, aesthetic, functional, accessibility, mechanical. It also takes into consideration the various needs of the community at large, student needs, teacher needs, all from a programming and practical perspective. It takes into consideration financial needs of the community, and any resources we might want to incorporate into the school that will be utilized by the community at large. So, for example, more full-scale performing arts center or a fitness center or whatever it might be. Those are just examples. And it would also include conceptual schematic designs for whatever solution that they present if a large-scale project is recommended as a result of the study. Next slide, please. Sure. So why now? Two sort of categories of considerations here. One is the physical plan of the building. The building itself was constructed completed in 1950. Or at least that's what the keystone of the building says. And the last major renovation was 20 years ago. The major components of the building are reaching end of life. We're going to have to replace them and incur costs in ongoing maintenance. And there's a general interior and exterior building, both the spaces and aesthetics are in disrepair, and I shouldn't say disrepair. I think that's a misstatement there. I think that we do as good as we can in Cohasset maintaining these facilities, but they are aged and dated and in need of refurbishment. And that leads me to the second category of considerations here, and those are programming considerations, which are looking at the fact that education has changed, it's evolved fairly significantly since we were all in high school or grade school for that matter. But obviously this is related to middle high school. And when we're talking about that level, education has evolved from a more what's colloquially referred to as the sage on the stage or lecture-based instruction to more holistic instruction, collaborative, project-based, experiential learning. And you'll see in the slides that I'll run through fairly quickly with the pictures that today's learning institutions are specifically designed with that programming need in mind. They also, and you'll see this as well, I'll point out examples of this in the photos, they also try to create real world situations for the students. In other words, situations that they will encounter when they are in professional environments, okay? Communal conference spaces and lounge spaces, collaboration spaces that will, I think, that do better prepare them for becoming part of the professional workforce. Next slide, please, Mr. Chair. So how to become to these conclusions? Well, we had the charge for the School Facilities Committee was drafted in 2020. It wasn't, the committee itself wasn't constituted until 2021. Once it was, we had engaged a design firm, AI3, which is an educational design firm. They design and create and construct schools all over Massachusetts and New England for that matter. And we engaged them to conduct what was called an existing condition study. This was an in-depth, comprehensive analysis of all buildings, not just the middle high school. We wanted to know where we stood with all the school buildings. That's part of the charge of the committee. And in doing so, they, analyzed all facets of the buildings: aesthetic, mechanical, structural, programming, accessibility, all of those components, and created a comprehensive final product for us to review. And as a result of that, we see that there are ongoing maintenance and repair needs in the elementary buildings, but those buildings themselves are in fairly good shape from a programming perspective and structural mechanical perspective. When it comes to when it came to the middle high school, however, that building was found to be deficient in many critical areas and needs, and they're recommending major renovation or replacement. So with me, as I noted, was the chairperson of the School Facilities Committee, Jason Earls, and he has come prepared with a spreadsheet that tries to extrapolate some of the or all of the maintenance issues that were identified by the existing condition study and assign timelines, priorities, and also financial figures to them. These are fairly conservative financial figures, but I'll let him present it. It'll help give you a sense of what type of future costs we're looking at incurring throughout different periods of time. So I'll turn it to our chairman, Jason Earls.
Hey, Craig, I'm sorry, just a second.
Yes.
For my fellow select board members, the spreadsheet, if it's easier to read, is in your inbox.
Thank you, Ms. Healy-Dupold. Jason, can you hear us?
Barely.
Oh, you're up.
All right. Thank you. That's what I needed to hear. Thank you, Craig. So yeah, like Craig said, we did had an existing conditions study done. What that showed was an Excel spreadsheet was provided to us with some numbers. Now, these are over about a year ago, these numbers. So my estimation, reaching out to people that I know in the industry, we probably have to put like an 8 to 10% escalation on all these numbers to hit current values, current totals today. And they broke it down in high, medium, and low priorities. And what I'm showing you right now is the high priority list for Joseph Osgood. We have Deer Hill here, as well as the Cohasset and Middle High School. And what my committee has been doing, as you can see these numbers here, is we're trying to come up with a priority list, because if you look all the way at the bottom, the grand total, if we wanted to do everything, is 29 million to 35 million. And we all know that that's just not going to happen. The town, there's no way we can afford to do that right away. So our number one priority, obviously, and I can't go into it in too much detail, is the security for all three buildings, which our committee is going to have a meeting on Thursday to go through what those items are and what constitute these costs. But as you can see, there's a lot of things on these lists: replacement of roofs, boiler plants at Osgood, again, roofing again at Deer Hill. And the middle school has a whole host of issues in themselves, mainly exterior concerns, HVAC controls, a lot of big ticket items. So I'm trying to map out a 10-year plan, and hopefully we can chip away at these every year, so that we don't have a problem like we are having in the Cohasset Middle High School. Because as much as these numbers are high, the longer we wait, the higher these numbers are going to go up. So that's what we're in the process of doing. I was flabbergasted, quite honestly, to find out that this stuff really hasn't been handled or looked at or even taken care of since this report came out. So now we're going to take care of it, and we're bringing this to the forefront. We're letting the community know that there's items in these schools that need to be done, or else it's really going to cost us down the road. So I will stop sharing there. Craig, you can go through the rest of the slides unless anybody has any questions for me now, or we can wait till the end.
Let's wait till the end, Mr. Earls. I'm going to turn it over briefly to Dr. Sullivan, who's going to just present a few concepts about academic programming. Dr. Sullivan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Craig. Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay? Good, excellent. I imagine, Craig, you have some pictures of the conditions of the school in this slideshow, just so I don't go to my slides.
I do. Would you prefer to have me go through the photos first and then do this? Or I thought this was a sensible point to do it. I can do it at any point though, whatever.
No, I think this is fine. I'll just give an overview for time's sake and not go to the pictures, and you can show them later. But you know, Jason obviously mentioned some of the physical plant issues that we have with Cohasset Middle High School, but we certainly have academic needs, and the academic needs that are not being met at Cohasset Middle High School right now are in the critical phase, according to the AI3 study. First off, some of the issues we have is just really undersized classrooms. Craig mentioned that the original building was in 1950 built, and then he mentioned a 2001 or 2 or 3, I guess, renovation. Well, we also had a renovation in 66, a renovation in 96, and it really created a large enough facility, but not large classrooms. So we have undersized middle school core classrooms, undersized high school core classrooms, vastly undersized middle school science classrooms, high school science classrooms. Vocational technology is not sufficient in the space. Our auditorium is undersized. Our dining and food service area is undersized. Our cafeteria is undersized. And according to AI3, to break up these rooms it's sort of become like a Frankenstein building. There's like more problems as you get into trying to do that. But that's the first situation. And what that does is it causes a lack of flexibility. We don't have sufficient storage. We have no interaction with the outdoors in our classrooms. We have no ability to logically organize classes into academic neighborhoods at the middle school level. Middle schools, the typical middle school now is basically teamed, so that you have a collaborative space, so that teams that consist of the academic subjects can collaborate, and as Craig mentioned briefly, can pursue project-based or authentic learning. We don't have the space to do that. We don't have the space to collaborate. We have definitely not appropriate collaboration space. We can't, there's no signage within the school building. to show any location of any particular areas for study. There's no resources for learning or social interaction available within the academic wing at all in the middle school and the high school. Our project-based learning lab, really, we have no modern project lab for students to gain diverse hands-on experiences. We have no difference between the core classrooms and the STEM room at the middle school level. We only have one STEM room, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and sometimes you throw art in there. Very behind the times in that regard. We have no vocations anywhere in the school other than wood shop at the high school level, which is really not accessing and working to our strength with our marine-based community. We could do a lot with that. We have really just a wood shop that's vastly undersized and almost not safe at times compared to other buildings. We have no collaboration space. Our students are, because of the undersized classrooms, our teachers basically are confined to doing pretty much stand and deliver lessons within their class. There's just nowhere to move. And the collaboration has to happen outside in the hallways in many cases, which isn't good for security reasons. It's not good for social emotional reasons. There's very little light in these hallways, and it's certainly not good for academic learning reasons. Just to kind of summarize some of the other spaces, we have no display or visual connections throughout the building. You don't see any work displayed in the hallways. And we have no indoor-outdoor connections, which is really important for all types of learning and certainly for social emotional purposes as well. There's no socialization. The socialization space is very limited. That's a huge detraction in the building. And we don't really have the ability to use our spaces as community resources. We have an undersized auditorium, and we just don't have the ability to do that. New buildings do help in regards to academic achievement. There's the studies that show that, but not only to mention that, but our building, which does not allow itself to help with project-based learning. There's a lot of gains that happen academically with project-based learning that we just can't meet. The teaching environment is subpar. We have great teachers, and the teachers are the most important factor in the learning. There's a lot of studies that show that, but we can't really supply them with the tools they need in the environment that they're presently set with. So that's just some high overarching views. I'll be glad to answer any questions, but I wanted to provide that from an academic lens. And I'll turn it back to you, Craig.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Let's wait until the end of the presentation, just so I can get through this for any questions I'm sure the select board might have. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Mr. Schreier, could you go to the slide there you go. I'm just going to run through quickly some photos, a number of photos that show different facets of school. This is not to demonstrate that the School Facilities Committee wants a pretty new building, as the advisory council put it. This is just to show you depictions of what we're talking about. And we're mentioning what the needs from an academic programming perspective and also aesthetic and structural. All right, so Mr. Rick, could you please, thank you. So starting with the photos of the comparison to the exteriors of the school. So this is the Abington Middle High School. This is actually the reason I led with this is because this is a building of interest to the School Facilities Committee and also the school committee. It's similar enrollment, and obviously where it's a middle high school, similar need. And you see here, very bright, airy, accessible front entrance where it's clear. You can't see from this photo at the size because it's not in slide view format, but one of those little turrets is labeled high school. One of them is labeled middle school. So it's very clear where you go in and out of each school. And then they obviously combine within the middle. You'll see in that little rotunda area that's between those two turrets, you'll see what's in the interior there and later in the slides. Next slide, please. This is the exterior of a middle school in Natick. Again, a different, completely different enrollment needs from Cohasset, but just giving an idea of like very clear main entrance, open and airy, and like the main approach to the school leads right to the entrance. Next slide, please. Here's Plymouth South High School, same themes you see recurring. Next slide, please. And here's ours. So the high school entrance is essentially obscured. It's very difficult to know where you enter the building if you're not a regular here. And it's obviously not very welcoming. Our middle school entrance is, I think, does a lot better. It's still set back. It's not clear from the road. You can't actually see it. It's not obvious until you're up there, but it at least offers a clear, inviting entryway. But you see, it's still lacking. Both entrances are still lacking, especially from a multi-use building where it's just not clear where you go into each building. Next slide, please. Next comparisons are learning spaces. Next slide, please. And these are all, by the way, with the exception of one slide that depicts a learning space in this set. These are all schools that currently exist in Massachusetts. So here you can see, and again, these photos are a little bit more difficult to make out some of the components of the learning spaces in this view, but you can see the integration of technology, climate control, which we don't have throughout all our buildings. You'll see the vents there in the top. You'll see that, and this is a recurring theme, you'll see that the seating areas and desks are usually mobile. They're easily portable. This is to provide for ease of collaboration. And you'll see that in most of these modern classrooms. Also extremely inviting in that it, has floor to ceiling windows. You'll see a lot of incorporation of natural light in these classrooms. Next slide, please. Here's an example of what I was talking about. First, a few examples of what I was talking about when they try to incorporate real world facilities or sort of adult facilities in modern day secondary learning institutions. This is an example of a common area conference room or collaboration room where students are allowed to assemble and collaborate on projects and sort of engage in independent study. And that this is something obviously that we've all seen in office buildings. This is from a school in Fall River. Next slide, please. Again, you'll see in this photograph from Beverly Middle School, this is a STEM lab. So you have a lot of very intelligent storage solutions, portable seating arrangements. And also, I don't know if you can make it out, there's some small black boxes hanging from the ceiling. Those are retractable outlets. So there's always ease of access to utilities so that they can use power tools or just access, electric energy when they need it for various learning purposes. Also, the entranceway is a very inviting, open entranceway to sort of, open it up to the learning neighborhood, as Dr. Sullivan alluded to. Next slide, please. Here's another example of a real world situation or an adult situation that they're trying to incorporate into secondary learning spaces now. And this is a breakout room, which allows teachers to separate their classrooms into group collaborations while still maintaining direct eyesight supervision on those students, but allowing them to collaborate independently and then switch off with the students that are getting more direct instruction experiences in the classroom next door. Next slide, please. Here's an example of common learning spaces, both from JFK School in Natick. On the left, you'll see a slide that incorporates the use of a vertical garden that also connects to a science lab in there, a horticultural science lab. And you'll also see that there are, and you'll see this in other photos as well, there are interchangeable passive learning experience throughout the hallways, which you can change those, palettes, those signs, and obviously the digital screens can obviously display different things at various times. So as you're walking down the hallway, it can give you fun facts about, whatever it is that the principal has decided to advertise, or that whatever, the teachers, whoever's in charge of that. Next slide, please. Here's an example of the one photo that's not from Massachusetts throughout these slides. This is a modern science lab that's designed in this particular case for a horticultural lab. And you'll see it doesn't have lecture space. It would be, people would be instructed as they're doing project-based collaborative learning combined with instruction. You'll see in our science labs, there's areas set off that are wasted space where kids are seating in those old desks in rows. They don't need to be doing that. They need to utilize the space smarter so that they're dedicating that more fully to collaborative learning experiences. You'll see that ease of access to utilities too. You can see those black boxes hanging with the retractable cords. So there's all kinds of utility access. Next slide, please. Here's some examples of Cohasset's current learning spaces. So you just see that there are suboptimal solutions for providing access to utilities, technology. The classrooms have odd arrangements because of the undersized that Dr. Sullivan was speaking to here. The teacher's desk is on the side instead of the front. Next slide, please. Here's a traditional classroom, something that we're all used to. This is more along the lines of what we all saw when we were in high school. And this is a history class at the high school. And you'll see, you know, standard windows, not letting not maximizing natural light, desks just in rows, not conducive to collaborative learning, not inviting entranceways. There's no academic neighborhood, and there's no incorporation of technology here built in incorporated or integrated in the classroom. Next slide, please. Here's an example of our STEM lab, one of our STEM labs, and it's set up for collaborative learning by moving these desks together. And you'll see it's really, yes.
It's our only STEM lab, and there's basically no difference between this and a regular classroom. So all those differentiated options you showed in all those buildings, we don't have that. So this is basically a classroom that's been reappropriated to be a STEM lab.
Right. Thank you for that clarification, Dr. Sullivan. I appreciate that. Yes. So, okay. So it's our only STEM lab, and you'll see that because we have suboptimal storage solutions, it's fairly cluttered. It's not conducive to that, you know, truly independent collaborative learning, because you're right next to the people. You have these non-portable seating arrangements, and we're trying to make do so we can offer the students this academic experience. We're trying to make do with what we have, but it's obviously suboptimal. Next slide, please, Mr. Schreier. Here's an example of a science lab. This is what I was alluding to earlier. You'll see that wasted space that's set aside for direct lecture instruction when we don't need that. We can use the lab space for that, so that while they're learning, they're doing, right? So they're getting that audio, that visual learning, but they're also getting the hands-on project-based experiential learning. Next slide, please. Here are collaborative learning spaces off of Classroom. This is the solution that Cohasset comes up with, and you see it all the time when you walk the schools. We don't have those breakout rooms. We don't have collaborative learning spaces. So we see this, and the next slide, please, Mr. Schreier, all the time with kids sitting out in the classrooms. There's a number of different problems with this. They're fairly obvious. I mean, it's not comfortable. It's not conducive to really like engaging, robust discussion. But also it doesn't allow for direct eyesight supervision while the teacher is instructing the rest of the class. They will have to break out and come and pop their heads out from time to time, you know, which is done, and the teachers, I think, do the best they can, but it's suboptimal. And then the last slide,
not to mention, this is, you can see that this is a little bit of natural light there, but it's such a dark building that it's almost like at times you're in a shelter because there's no light going through the halls, particularly in the middle school.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. We can skip this slide, Mr. Schreier. Thank you. So here's food service. Run through these fairly quickly. They're fairly self-explanatory.
Craig,
Yes.
We're starting, we have other people later on, so.
Okay. Would you like me to end the presentation?
No, I want you to speed it up a little bit, but
Okay.
we will be spending a lot of time. We're giving us an awful lot of information. By the way, I think we really appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you. I mean, I'm happy to do this another time. I certainly want to be respectful of everyone else's time. So would you like me to start? I'm trying to go as fast as I can because I am aware there's a lot.
Are there some highlights in the rest of the presentation?
Well, I guess what I can do is skip the rest of the photos and have you all view them on your own.
Yeah.
You have the presentation.
We've
So
already done, I think we've done that.
okay, I just wanted to walk you through some aspects of it, but I guess, you know, generally speaking, you're looking at some general themes. Our passive learning experiences, even in the food service areas, incorporation of natural light. They're in communal areas, like in the central academic neighborhood. They're providing real world examples. Here's the other example of a cafe in Abington Middle School, again, middle high school, again, that building that we like. So that's like an area where students can congregate on their own, on their utility periods or whatever it might be. We can skip ahead, please, Mr. Schreier. Auditoriums speak for themselves, right? These places age. So ours is aged, and that's fine, that's natural. But the key is to incorporate solutions that are state of the art to begin with, but also can integrate newer technologies as they come along from a central location. It's just not something our facility is able to do, and provide. In this thing you see in this picture here from Plymouth South, you see both are flanked by open areas where which is it's reserved for accessibility for ADA compliance and to allow folks that are disabled to have an equal or better viewing experience. And this is our current performing arts facility or auditorium, whatever you want to call it. Next slide, please. MSBA is, you know, I'll try and go through this as fast as possible. We have, as the select board's aware, because they have to sign off on it. We submitted a statement of interest to the MSBA so that we could try and get invited to what's called their core program, which a program that provides state subsidy for replacement or major renovation programs in schools throughout Massachusetts. It is appropriately a needs-based organization that prioritizes underserved communities. So Cohasset's always going to be competing with that consideration. Cohasset's not going to be viewed as underserved. And so that does lend itself to perhaps extensive application process, meaning, you know, multiple years, which there's several examples of schools that have applied many times that have similar demographics to Cohasset and have either had to wait a long time to be accepted or have not been accepted and ended up going it alone, so to speak. After having wasted a long time, you know, sort of trying to, you know, hitch their hopes to the state subsidy, which never came. And in the meantime, they're incurring ongoing maintenance costs with the current building and also project costs for any sort of contemplated or prospective project for renovation or replacement go up as you wait. Next slide, please. Benefits of a feasibility study. We're almost there, Mr. Creighton. Benefits of a feasibility study. Well, primarily, and I do want to preface this, we're not asking for, you know, $100 million or $200 million for a new school. It's not what we're recommending. We're asking for the town to consider whether it wants to appropriate $1.5 million for a feasibility study to provide Cohasset as a community with a lot of robust and valuable information, so that we can make an informed decision, educated decision about what path we should follow in terms of the middle high school in order to address these deficiencies that were pointed out by the existing condition study. So it's really a response to the existing conditions program, existing conditions study, excuse me. So this will provide a parallel path because the MSBA process does include a feasibility study, and we will be incurring some duplicative costs, possibly, if we end up getting accepted by the MSBA and we decide to do our own feasibility study first. However, it depends on how far we get in our feasibility study before, like if we are, as I said, on a parallel path applying to the MSBA. So if we submit our SOI this year, we're informed by December that we're accepted, well, we'll stop our own feasibility study because we will have known that we'll have to go through this MSBA. Meanwhile, we'll lead with the things that we know will not be duplicative spending, which will be repurposed to any feasibility study, whether it's MSBA or our own, such as Enviro, Geo, land surveys, things like that. But it gives us a parallel path and keeps us moving forward so that we're able to give Cohasset information about what to do with long-term solution. Also, even if we have to spend money again on similar facets of a feasibility study, you know, whether it might be 2, 3, 4 elements of it, because it involves many elements. It's still our own feasibility study will give us competing information to compare and contrast with whatever study that is done in accordance with the MSBA procedures, and it'll help us make more informed decisions. Potential funding solution. This is a slide I added in. I didn't have this in the presentation before when I presented to advisory, just because in my conversation with some interested stakeholders, it was suggested that perhaps we can consider a special purpose stabilization fund for this under General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 5B. I'm sure you all know much more about special stabilization funds than I do, probably. But it's just, I put it in here for the purposes of the presentation, which will be posted. And, you know, just for your consideration, you know, perhaps what we do is present that to the town at town meeting, you know, it should a warrant article make it to town meeting, you know, maybe the town has an appetite for a special stabilization fund, not only for a feasibility study, but also for ongoing school maintenance, because this will help us simultaneously address the ongoing maintenance issues that we have to address at the other schools. So allocate $1.5 million to a special stabilization fund. We're not going to incur $1.5 million in feasibility costs immediately. We're not even going to start that probably until, you know, at best case, if it's approved, you know, in the fall, it'll probably be started. So by the time the next fiscal year comes around for future stabilization funding considerations or appropriations, we will have, you know, probably only made it halfway through the feasibility study, and the rest of that money could have been used to or allocated to other needs like in the elementary schools or maintenance needs in the middle high school. Because we have to protect that, we have to take care of the buildings, even if we're considering doing something long-term for the middle high school, we have to address any sort of ongoing maintenance needs. So that's something to consider.
See if this select board has some questions.
It's a great time because it's the last slide.
Oh, well, that's good. Great minds work along.
That's right.
Select that. One.
Yeah, I do have a few questions, but I might throw one. First of all, based on what you're saying is we can't do a feasibility study that's going to meet the MSBA standards. Do they have to conduct it? Should we get accepted into the program?
So don't think of it as, will the study meet their standards? It's, will certain elements of a feasibility study satisfy all the elements of the one that they need? And the answer to that is, some of them will not. They will not, we will not be repurpose certain elements of ours to theirs, but some of them will, right? Like, for example, land survey is a land survey. And I've talked to the MSBA about this to glean whether or not they would be open to that. And it seems like they certainly would. They wouldn't make us, in other words, do the exact same thing just for the sake of doing it. So we'd be able to repurpose a number of different elements of it. There are some that may force us into a duplicative spending situation, but even then, Ms. Kennedy, we will be armed with additional information. So say we go and do it their way, whatever they want, and we have done our own, and there's some conflicting data. Well, it's like, well, now we can use those two things to come to the best most constructive solution. So it's not completely wasted money, and it wouldn't be that much. It's not like we're going to be, respending $1.5 million. Or 1 million, or however much the feasibility study ends up costing.
Could I just rephrase that question, more clearly? Will doing this help us with MSBA?
So that's a different question, because some people worry that it would adversely impact our application, right? It won't. I've asked them that as well. To them, it will announce that we're serious about, a major renovation or replacement project, that we're trying as a community to do everything we can to keep things moving. Some people were concerned that, like, if we do it, are they going to look at it like, oh, well, Cohasset's too good for us, they're doing their own thing. And that's not a concern after speaking with the MSBA.
So not negative, but maybe not positive either, because that kind of what.
No, I think it would be positive, because they're seeing that we're taking steps so that we're completely vested, because the MSBA wants to make sure if they're going to invite a community to the program, the community is invested in doing it.
Well, so we do all this and all the studies and like that. The MSBA said that sometimes they take time, sometimes they don't. So what's guesstimate? What's the timeline? How long are they, leaving on the stove before they walk?
It's a great.
Have you heard anything?
I wish I had an answer. The problem is even if we're close in 1 year, it's not like we start from that point the following year. It's a whole new pool. And because it appropriately prioritizes underserved communities, if you have a host of communities from, say, more urban epicenters that are in much more need because they're financially underserved, they're always going to take priority over us. So there's no telling who the pool is going to be. And frankly, with our demographics, I think we can get comfortable with the fact it's going to take us a few years to get invited. So meanwhile, our project costs increase. We're pouring more money into the existing building, and there's things to think about. It's playing smart,
So we're better off to agree, to some looking at alternatives towards the MSBA, which it seems to me that people saying, to drive for a while or potentially.
I think that it's just, look at it in terms of partnership. So it would be great to partner with the MSBA. We'd love to do that. We also, given the state of our school and what the existing condition study tells us, we don't want to sit around and spin our wheels for 5 or 6 years, hoping that train will come to our station someday, right? So if private partnering in a community where there are very affluent individuals, not saying the town itself is affluent, I don't really like that, but there are individuals that are very affluent here and may be committed to education, and we might be able to create a finance committee or development committee that could raise significant private funds that could offset whatever MSBA subsidy is, especially when viewed in tandem with the increasing project costs and inflation, that come along with waiting.
So I wanted to, and really for my fellow select board members, think about the special purpose stabilization fund. This is a fund that Diane and I and our finance director, Jennifer had talked about last meeting, and as we look at the Excel spreadsheet that Mr. Earl sent around, this to me is also a very appropriate use of the special stabilization fund, not just for the middle high school, but also for the particularly when we look at the red lines in there relating to security. This, I think, is what special stabilization fund could really help us get ahead of. I would like the town to get out of the cycle of deferred maintenance on our buildings, deferred decisions, but really more importantly, deferred maintenance. We have, 1/3 of our town moving in and out of those schools every day. And so I think that trying to get ahead of that, including through a consistent funding source to address the smaller projects, it's not going to be good for a big renovation, right? The stabilization fund can't do that as I think it's envisioned, but it can be good to start knocking off some of whether we go forward with the feasibility study or other items on that repair list. This is something that I think we should also think about in tandem, because that is going to be, I think, an important way to also show the MSBA, but more importantly, our residents that we're committed to taking care of the buildings in a responsible way. It's going to be really good.
Yeah.
Just to piggyback off that, I think spending money, however we do it, shows that the need is real. Like, we're not gonna spend $1 million to do a feasibility study or $1 million to fix a building unless it's mission critical. It just doesn't happen. And having been involved in the town hall renovation discussions for now 14 years, it just gets worse the longer you do. So one of the notes I took during the presentation was that, I really do want to have a discussion about what we can do to start ticking off those maintenance, regardless of the discussion relating to the MSBA and a new renovated building. The other thing I think we need to really have a conversation about, again, it's where we tripped up in the town hall discussions over the years, is the funding source. Because it's all, there's no question that some of our buildings are not serving the purpose. And certainly the high school is one of those buildings that's not serving the current academic needs relating to how students learn these days. Same time, it's the scale, we have 4,000-ish taxpayers. And we're not going to get a break. We're still going to be looking at $150 million, $200 million school. But there's just no way to scale this that I know. And I think we have to be honest and upfront and have those discussions really early on. What are our options here? Because I don't know that we can do it alone. I think private fundraising as a fundraiser it sounds good, but that is kind of pie in the sky, to be perfectly honest with you. I know in Beverly, that middle school, which is beautiful, serves 1,400 students. And probably a declining population, as most schools are these days. And we have to look at that, or can we afford $150 million for, whatever number of students we have. And so I think there's a lot of conversations to be had. I do think we should be focused on whatever we can do to keep the buildings maintained, and with that priority list that Mr. Earl showed, which I think is fantastic, but needs a lot of conversation, a lot of deep diving in terms of where we get.
Yeah, I just want to throw in one of the things I think people who are watching at home, and I'm glad Diane brought that up, is the ballpark figure we're talking about. And the other thing is, I know there's been some analysis of what the student enrollment really is, and I guess it's stabilized. Certainly, we're certainly looking at a huge student enrollment. So do you have what that figure would be for, and is Diane accurate, is that we're at 150, $200 million on this?
That's $400 million.
Well, first off, an advisory was really glued to this concept as well. The reason we want to ask for a study is to figure that out. For me to sit here, I don't build schools, I don't design them, and I certainly don't fund them. So I don't know how much it's gonna cost to build a new school. I don't know that we need a new school. But what I do know is a feasibility study will give us the information that we need to make an informed decision there. You know, and you gotta look at it like, you know, capital budget head said, oh, well, you do a feasibility study and the train leaves the station and you're getting a new building. That's not accurate, okay? It's simply not true. The feasibility study is the train. Okay, without it, we can't decide whether we board it, whether we fuel it, whether we put it over in the yard, or whether we pull it out of the station. We have to, otherwise, we're just standing in an empty platform with no information and no movement on a building that we know is deficient in many ways. So that's, I don't know, Mr. Crane, the answer to your question, but that's what we'd find out.
And one of the things is like very, very large. Because the average taxpayer doesn't know if we're talking what the parameters are of the high and low, very broad, because we know we can't answer that. But so they don't have that perspective, and they also don't have the perspective of the enrollment, of the number of students and the number of families, you know, some families have one student, some three, and I'm just speaking then for behalf of the citizens at home who aren't as up to date. We all know this. We've all been through the schools. Those slides you showed us. We all know that as a select board. But I'm asking the questions some of the people at home would like at least a ball. That's all.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, but all those things you're talking about, enrollment, this all would be included in the feasibility. That's why we're only asking for the warrant article for them to decide what they want. Maybe, I mean, I think the 150, 200 range is probably accurate if you had to ask me as a layperson, but I mean, I don't know how compelling that information
But
is.
how many students do we have today?
In the middle high school, on average, you're talking about like 120 a class maybe, so, you know,
Those.
and there's 7 grades.
Superintendent is here.
He is here. I don't know that he has that. He came with enrollment information. We can certainly share that, but if he has, I mean, you probably know how many people are in there.
I did come with enrollment information, and I can actually show it on my screen. So this is our, I just gotta make it a little smaller here.
And Lance has his hand up, so.
So this is NASDAQ projections, but you can see, if you just look, oh, if I can get this a little bit smaller here.
Bigger, actually.
There you go.
You can't read it.
You can't read that?
Oh, it's just a small projector, big room.
Okay, so I'll just read the numbers. So this is just projections, PK to 12 here, is 2022-23, 1,406, and then obviously I'll just read down 1,404, 1,398, so it dips a bit. 1,383, then it goes back up, 1,412, 1,427, 1,455, 1,468, 1,493, 1,518, 1,541.
800 is good enough for government.
So obviously it stabilizes and then it goes up. So we're not looking at radical changes. So I think the idea of stable growth is what's projected for us. And I know there are other ways of computing projections, but NASDAQ does a pretty good job of looking at our enrollment. And remember, you get a new building, we're bringing more kids in because our private school, people who go to private school between 5th and 6th grade, and then between 8th and 9th grade, that's going to change. More people are going to come to Cohasset Public Schools. So I think our enrollment is still healthy. And so I just wanted to present that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, we do have a question from the audience. Are you taking any questions?
We will on Jason Lance.
Yes, all right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add, actually, a lot of what I was going to say has been covered either by questions from the committee or by other presenters. I did want to focus, though, on one thing. I think Dr. Sullivan did a commendable job of expressing the academic needs here. And as the chair of the school committee, I'm representing that perspective as well. I also wanted to just draw an analogy to my own life, which is when years ago I bought a Jeep Cherokee. We called it Leaky. because it leaked all over our side yard. It had all sorts of problems, but I loved that car, but I knew at some point it was going to have to be replaced. We know at some point this school is going to have to be significantly renovated or replaced. We don't know with what, we don't know how. And so what we're asking for here is optionality to learn about what we need to do to address these problems that we know are coming. And I will concede my own personal view here. I'm not sold that we need an entire new school. I think there might be options out there that can make this a more economical process for the town. And I really think, knowing what I know from my membership in the long-term financial planning committee, that we really need to look hard at those options because the town has a lot of demands and limited needs and limited means. So I really want us to focus though here on the $1.5 million number and not the $150 million number, and think about that as buying options and information that we will need, because that $150 million, $200 million, $250 million number is coming. And the sooner we can get in front of it with information and get a plan in place to finance it, the better off the town will be. So thank you very much.
Well put, thank you. Okay, Corey.
So I feel bad, we have people waiting, and there's a lot more here. I mean, I really want to unpack, you said a bunch of interesting things, right? The idea that this is parallel tracks, but there's learning things. I want to learn more about that, because again, I think all of us are being, to Lance's point, there's a lot of needs, and we have to maximize budgeting, and we have to figure out, how does it save money? When is the break point? And so I have all these other millions of questions. I don't want to get into them because I think we're late. So, Mr. Chair, it's okay. I'd love to invite these guys back, and thank you for doing all the work you've done tonight. But I do want to have a fresh brain to start talking about, okay, is this parallel path? What are the benefits for it? So I really want to unpack that a lot.
I think it's clear this discussion is not over. Do we have people waiting? Do we hear them?
We do. We have Mike Dick, Capital Budget Committee, his question.
Okay.
Okay. Could the school facilities committee explain how they arrived at a cost of $1.5 million for a feasibility study? What might be accomplished with a series of smaller amounts approved by sequential town meetings?
That's effectively the special stabilization fund.
The answer to the direct question is our design firm that we commissioned to complete the existing condition study gave us the $1.5 million estimate as a generous estimate that we would not exceed throughout a feasibility study.
Any other questions, Justin?
I do not, Mr. Chair.
Comments from the select board? I think we probably do. Is it the consensus, Jean?
Yeah, so I think that this was meant to be like an introduction to the select board, to also gather their thoughts based on the information we've had, so we can come back and have some more back and forth with all the stakeholders here. But this, I thought, was a great first presentation, and we do have a timeline that we're going to hustle towards within March, so it was important, and I appreciate you all coming in sooner rather than later. And so maybe what we can do is table the discussion for tonight, but try to work towards, I think if Corey, for example, you have questions that we can find a way to, maybe have Tracy or Chris send those questions along, to the extent that when you come back next time, there can be, like, you can know ahead of time to the extent that you have questions.
Yeah, I want to have that.
Yeah,
I
I mean, we'll discuss it publicly, but just so they can prepare in advance to the extent that, there's some back and forth, including numbers, like enrollment, but stuff like that, that they can come more prepared with.
If I could just suggest that, the conversation really needs to be about the $1.5 million and or some other, that it's not about the school project. And
Yes.
I went down that road myself, but because I know that we are going to need to answer some of those questions when we go to town meeting, but we really should focus on the request to.
I think
warn article.
we won't get anything done unless we focus that. And we might have a mechanism where questions can be asked to the town manager's office and then asked to you, and that kind of work around over the meeting. So if Corey has a question, Diane, Paul, or Jean has a question, they can send it to you and you can answer kind of to the town manager, and that way we're not deliberation.
Or, well, and just to clarify what I meant is next time that we're probably having this discussion now, not the time.
Yes. I would, for people at home, again, we have a long-range financial planning, and this is the type of stuff that goes in behind the scenes to figure out what are the competing demands or asks for your tax dollars. So this is very good, and I hope a lot of people are paying attention at home, because this is very important. Where the watershed time in the town's finances, we have a lot of demands. We have to know accurately what they are, and then we have to allocate. Thank you.
Thank you all for having me. If I could just leave you with one thought, and that is all we are asking for from the select board is this is a community decision. Anything related to big, long-term solution to the school is a community decision. We're just asking to put this issue in front of the community so they can decide if they want to allocate money to a study that will provide them more information to make an informed decision about what to do with the school.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Appreciate the time. I'm sorry.
All the good work you do for the schools.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
The updated comprehensive and legislative.
Chairman Glenn Pratt, Director of Emergency Management. Shortly after the events of 9/11, Homeland Security through their FEMA organization required every county, city, town, and Indian tribe in the country to prepare a comprehensive emergency management plan and update it every 5 years. The plan basically lays out the framework for our community-wide emergency organization and response and recovery from disasters. And so we have worked over the last year and a half to update ours. There are 9 department heads that have signed off on their responsibilities as far as the mitigation, planning, response and recovery. And what I'm here tonight for is to ask that you approve the plan, promulgate the plan, and sign off on it, and I'll submit it on back up through the emergency management channels.
Everybody, any comments on that? We had a chance to look at it.
One just small thing, but on the hierarchy list, it was emergency management director, police chief, and fire chief. Is that a change from before, or is that how it always was?
I think that's the part which is who has authority to make changes.
No, it's after that. I think it was the operational authority, wasn't it, in that section? Sorry, the law, you know, I'm not the front.
Yeah, I don't believe that's changed.
Okay.
I think that's the same thing. So if I could, there's 2 places we need you to sign on this, that could be done.
Well, we need. Yeah, we need a motion to authorize.
I move to authorize and accept and sign a comprehensive emergency management plan for the town of Cohasset.
We have a second.
February 20th.
Second. Motion made and seconded to sign the comprehensive emergency management plan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
Just long succession. Yeah. Just like them starting with like previously had a home. She said it was something kind of like.
Okay.
It's not operational.
No, so.
All right, our agenda, we have the town hall funding discussion. I think last week, so we've done that last week. The zoning bylaw amendment article, presentation, Tom Callan. Our apologies, Tom, for keeping you so late. Well, no worries.
Yeah.
No, my back is giving me.
Would you like me to come on screen?
No, it's kind of up to them. You have our slideshow right there? All right. I don't know if we're gonna want a full presentation or not, so I'll have it ready. Well, that's the judges. That's the judges. Summary.
Want that?
Bring up the slideshow. If we could.
So me too, but we're gonna have to- of course. No way. It's me goes there, okay.
This thing's stirring. actually.
Is this it right
Yeah,
here,
this
Tom?
thing right here. No, the one we used for the forum. yeah.
Oh.
I don't know if they want to see that. But it's up to you. So, no. Okay.
There's a question about.
Yeah, well, I want to get some feedback from you. Oh, yeah, I heard about that. Okay. Ready? All right, so, good evening. Thanks for having me tonight. This is Tom Callahan, Chair of the Zoning Bylaw Committee on the Planning Board. I guess for most of tonight, your most important thing tonight is to approve these articles being sent over to the Planning Board for its public hearing. It's already scheduled for tomorrow. I don't know how much of a presentation you want tonight, but you've received a copy of the slideshow that we did for the public forum last week. And you also received the judge's quick summary that was updated this morning with typos fixed. So it's up to you as to how much of detail you want to go into, or to try to just hit the.
Why don't you hit the highlights and then, this has been back and forth with the select board. So people have questions that are in depth, but why don't you just hit the highlights?
Yeah, no, and there's some feedback that we'd like to have. I don't expect you to vote on your recommendations tonight, because I assume you want to read for planning and advisory, but there is some feedback I'd like to get. Anyway, so,
Jane has a question.
And I'm sorry, are you asking us to vote on a particular warrant article?
no, I'm not. No, the most important thing you have to do tonight is to officially send the articles to the planning board, so it can conduct its hearing tomorrow.
But I guess what are the articles? Do we have copies of the?
Yes, you have them all summarized by Judge Cutler. There's about 6 of them, 7 of them. I'll go over them. There's an article regarding Articles 1 and 13 of the zoning bylaw. That's one article. An article about Article 3 of the zoning bylaw, which may be postponed if we don't get the town map updated in time. That's article number 2. That's 2 articles. An article relating to amendments to Article 6 of the bylaw. That's 3. Amendments to Article 8. Amendments to Article 12. And amendments to Article 2. So there's 6 articles.
I guess my question is maybe more basic. Is there what are you asking the select board in terms of putting something before town meeting? We're not going to put a PowerPoint before that, so if we're going to refer.
All right, well, we're jumping ahead as to how we're going to present this to town meeting. We haven't decided that as a committee. This slideshow that we did for the public forum is part of that's going to be shown to town meeting. Likely what we will do at town meeting is something akin to the judge's summary. The slideshow that we did and is available on the bylaw committee's website is a side-by-side comparison of all the articles for amendment. It's 52 pages. I'm not going to go through 52 pages of town meeting. It didn't go through 52 pages last week. So we'll breeze through the ones that are simple. But as far as town meeting itself goes, we'll have the warrant articles available on the screen. The first 9 pages of this slideshow was an introduction because we haven't dealt with the bylaw in such a comprehensive way in 36 years. So some background, some explanation about zoning and how everything works is appropriate. So I plan to ask the moderator to allow us that presentation, and then we'll just do article by article. I think conversations are at least underway. They were not held to the 5-minute rule because I don't think the introduction is going to get done in 5 minutes. It'll get done from 5 to 10. But I think it's going to be important at town meeting that we have the floor for a while to explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, some background and everything. I can go through those articles, those pages if you want. It's the first 9 pages of the slideshow. But then for the public, probably at town meeting, we will just have the warrant articles themselves, and we will not have the side-by-side comparison. We're not going to hand out 200 copies of a 52-page document. That's the plan at the moment. So there's 6 articles, that is going to be the total for this town meeting. Every one of them has 2 parts to it. Only one of those ones with 2 parts are going to be voted in 2 separate parts. So 6 articles right now tonight. You just have to send those 6 articles over to the planning board and conduct our. The planning board has a mandatory state law public hearing process that has to be tonight.
Well, Tom, so you're planning on putting up this right here, the one.
I'm sorry, say that again.
You're planning on putting this up and giving this to people in town to look at.
Everything right now is available on the website.
But I'm just saying,
Well, we haven't finalized anything about what we're going to do on May 1, since it's March. I know, and I'll take any suggestions, but we are going to, what we are going to do, we are planning to do is give an introduction so people have background of what we're doing, why, and what the bylaw is all about.
For people to read when they come in.
They can, yes, the first 9 pages of that slideshow can be put in the handout as well. But then we will go article by article.
Could I maybe help us out by focusing us, because basically, as Tom just said, statutorily, in order to get a zoning bylaw on the warrant, it has to go through the public hearing process and planning board. So our goal right now, whether we agree with any of this or disagree with any of this or have issues with it, is to refer these articles to the planning board for the public hearing process. It'll come back to us with recommendations or not, and then
you'll have recommendations either way. Then we're meeting with advisory next week, the 15th. We're meeting with advisory the 15th. I don't expect you to be a voting yay or nay on these tonight, but there is some feedback I would appreciate. I'll get to that when I get to it. But, tell me what you want to do with each
Well,
of
I
them.
think
I can go quickly through them. So
first of all, I think we want to talk about the board, because we have an option here. We can just say, send it to planning, because it will come back to us. It doesn't signify we agree with it. It's a procedure. Do we want to just simply do that now in light of the time, or do we want to ask some specific things? So this is a thing we need to record.
Yeah, so I mean, to your point, the presentation is long, and my reading of it is, I'm not the planning expert here. So to me, what these seem to be, to my interpretation, kind of what we asked for, what we expected. Largely cleaning up language, whatever, and we just should need to start the process of setting it for a hearing, going to advisory, and then we can kind of get into, once the bylaw committee has finalized some work product, then we can get into our actual vote. This is the beginning of it. I think they're doing what we said.
in this round, we're doing mostly housekeeping changes to administrative related articles. There are 2 substantive. There's a small substantive change. There's 2 larger substantive changes proposed for this go around. And then in the fall, we will be dealing with a lot of substance as we deal with other parts of the bylaw.
So, Jay.
So I guess, again, my question is, and I'm maybe not articulating it. Are the articles that we are in fact referring to the planning board, the new zoning bylaw is on the proposed right-hand side thumb of your slideshow? Is that the actual?
Yes, and or you look at the,
Like when the attorney general is asked to rule on the new bylaws, these are the ones that are on the right-hand side of the.
look at the side by side, look at Judge Cutler's summary that was handed out this morning is the most up to date. That slideshow was presented last week. We made some typo changes in it since. I assume it's been updated on the website. I can't say that. These are what we are going to be voting on, what the judge has summarized. And at the end, there will be 6 articles, and 6 articles will go to the Attorney General. The whole point of seeing the planning board, the advisory committee, the zoning board, and your board is that, yes, the text of these proposals may change between now and May 1st. But right now, this is where the state of that they're in. And right now, the whole works get guns up if we don't go to the planning board tomorrow night. And I don't understand, forgive me if I don't understand what the issue is, because
I think there was talk earlier of either a red line or a side by side. I think Gene was trying to figure out.
Well, I'm just, like, legally to make sure we're meeting our responsibility, we wouldn't be referring summary, we would just be referring the specific bylaw changes.
Yes.
That's what the planning board should need, so I think I'm just looking for the document that has the specific bylaw changes that, in whatever iteration it's in, we're being asked to refer, because I would imagine that the planning board would need that.
the planning board has everything you have at this point. Focus on this, focus on the judge's document. That is the 6 articles.
This is her
Summarized,
summary.
correct.
What Jane is asking for.
The 6 articles themselves?
Yes.
Okay, they're on the website. We can get them to.
Okay.
By the time we meet with you again, we can get them to.
He says she wants to see.
They are also
But you can say you.
correct. I can get you to, you can have them standalone, or yes, in this 52-page slideshow, they are side by side. The right side is the new, the left side is the existing.
Yeah, so,
That's what
okay, that's right. So what do you think is thoughts on the order? How do we want to handle this? Do we just want to say we're going to refer it over and we'll get to this later, or? I think we have to refer it. Well, we do have.
The only place where I would ask for feedback tonight is because it came up. The forum, I might say, the forum went well, except it wasn't incredibly well attended. It was well attended by the developer community, but not necessarily by the citizens of the town. It was a little disappointing. But since then, we had a meeting of the zoning bylaw committee the other night. There is some internal debate about the change to the definition of height. A sentiment has come up about postponing that to the fall because too many people are confusing the definitional change with the actual height limit we have in the bylaw, which is 35 feet at the moment. And we were going to address that in the fall when we do the table of dimensions, dimensional regulations. So there is some sentiment. So I guess before the zoning bylaw committee meets again later this month, we are going to have the feedback of the planning board. We'll have the feedback of the advisory committee. As long as we're here tonight, we won't see you before that next zoning bylaw committee meeting. I wonder if there's any questions, comments about the definition of height. Let me just explain, there's 2 aspects to the change in the definition. One is when we start to measure the 35 feet at the bottom of a structure, we are adding more data points than exists today. We don't really have a set number of data points today. Sometimes we get 2, sometimes we get 4. It's a way to cheat the system of coming up with a mean grade. We are already implementing the bottom measurement by practice. The building inspector is starting to implement it. On the bylaw committee, 5-0 support for that change. And we might go forward with just that change. That was another suggestion thrown at me today. The other is the definition of where you measure the top. And the only significant change is that currently on a peak roof, we measure it at the midpoint with an allowance for 5 feet more. So theoretically, you could have a 40-foot high building, even though our limit is 35 feet. The change is to say that even on a peak roof, like all other roofs, we use roofs measured at the highest point. 3 members of the bylaw committee are in favor of that, 2 are. We've had some debate about that. I didn't bring the opponent with us here tonight, didn't bring the slideshow. Well, you and I have different opinions of what you. With it. Yeah.
He summarized, and the real issue is this a sufficiently, the height, there's two ways of measuring it, sufficiently divisive, so it imperils passing the whole rest of everything else, so that decision has not been made. So, question for us is, do we want to discuss that, or do we just want to put this to planning as a procedural thing that we have to do, and how much time do we want to spend a lot of time with that? And also, I see there's people in the audience who might wish to speak to that. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak to these issues?
Yeah.
We couldn't let you sit there all.
Steve.
Mike Sardina, I have to admit, I haven't been in any of the forums regarding the bylaw, but I did see this particular revision that's being considered regarding building heights today. And the only comment I have on that is that it seems to me that it's the kind of issue that needs vetting across numerous committees in town to get it right. Because if you lower the height of the building by going through the actual peak to ridge line from what it was, it basically negates the use of the space that would have been essentially the equivalent of the third floor. And as you look at this from the standpoint of affordable housing and multiple family housing in town, what it does is it eliminates that third floor. And that eliminates units. And the only option presented in this bylaw is mansard roofs. And mansard roofs are not at all consistent with the character of New England town, especially for assets. So you either get flat roofs or you get mansard roofs. And quite honestly, I don't have any understanding, as I said, I think any of these forms, I don't have any understanding as to why that bylaw needed to be considered for change. Because so many buildings in town have that option already, that have already existed. They have the third floor, partial third floor. This almost eliminates the even feasibility of third floor. The other thing that's associated with this is the height of garages. Now, there's a lot of garages in town that have the floor above the actual parking bays. And the angle and the height of the garage roof is also being changed. So that basically they become a much flatter peak roof or slope roof, which eliminates possibility of space being used above the garage. That in conjunction with the discussion that's been batted around town for quite some time has to do with the bylaw associated with ancillary dwelling units. If you eliminate the space above the garage, you don't even have that option. And I'm not necessarily in favor of that ancillary use, secondary use, whatever it's called.
Accessory dwellings.
Well, not accessory, yeah, accessory dwellings, as opposed to an accessory building. Accessory building is one thing, accessory dwelling is something else as far as I'm concerned. It should be considered differently in the bylaw.
Well, thank you. This I think to the board, this is the type of intricate stuff that I don't think we want to get into. Tonight. I see Diane.
Well, with all due respect, I'd like to respond.
Again, I think this is why we have the planning board hold public hearings on this. I'm such a process person. The process was we were going to spend the fall and have public input meetings and try to come up with some consensus from those meetings and working with Judge Cutler as to what we might want to propose in this original town meeting. And I think this is that doesn't mean that the planning board is going to have hearings and they're going to hear from Mr. Sardina and others that have some concerns, and they'll be able to answer them and say, hey, you know what, you're right, we're not ready for this piece, or it's not whatever we refer to them and they discuss doesn't have to come back fully as the warrant or does.
Correct, and actually, my own thinking has evolved over the last 48 hours to postponing it for completely different reasons than is being stated by Mr. Sardina and I discussed with Jack earlier today. We have completely different reasons for wanting to do it. But again, I just want, in fairness, the zoning bylaw working group and the bylaw committee have discussed this change since day one for 2.5 years now. And, you know, it's sad that the public doesn't participate, but we have been out there and we've discussed it. It has been discussed at various times by various people for as long as I've been involved in town government. Because the definition of the height measurement of a peaked roof to some of us is completely illogical. It makes no sense. And I'll just say this, it's not going to encourage a flat roof everywhere. 35 feet is still the height limit, and let's not confuse the definition of how we measure it with the numbers.
The board wants to decide whether or not they want to decide that and debate that now.
I'm not looking for your decision on it, I'm looking for feedback.
Okay, that's what
I'm looking for feedback on it, I'm not looking for a
I'll finish
decision.
what you were saying. I was kind of-
All right, I'm just saying that it has been discussed, it has been debated for a long, long time. What would be left with a peak roof is the only change. We define today flat roof, mansard roof as being at the top. Any other type of roof, it's measured at the top. We have an exception in our bylaw for a peak roof. It is still 35 feet. 35 feet is 3 stories, in my view. 10 story in a residential setting, that's a 10-foot story. I think that's probably even large for a residential setting. I don't think we're going to kill 3-story buildings. I don't think we're going to kill flexibility. I don't think we're going to kill usable attics. What we're trying to prevent is the possibility of 40-foot structures in the residential parts of town. Now, during our debate, again, the number has come up, the 35. We have talked for 2.5 years about changing that in the harbor to account for flood elevation, which wasn't done when the overlay bylaw came into effect. We have talked about, some people have said, well, maybe it needs to be higher in the village. If you read Cohasset 143, well, there's plenty of people in town who also think the village buildings that are already built are too high and that we're overdeveloping the village.
2/3 of those people moved away.
No, and by the way, I looked today, and by the way, for the new building at 1 Pleasant Street, which I believe is 3 stories, is less than 40 feet tall. It's less than, and even at the middle, or going to the middle, it's a peak roof building, and it's not 35 feet at the middle of the peak. It's within our bylaw guidelines, as it is stuff. Today is the first time I've heard anything about affordable housing, and I don't know where that is coming from, because affordable housing would have to be developed within our 35-foot height limit. However, when we look at the dimensional table in the fall, as we would try to make, for example, an exception, a change to the 35-foot number in the harbor for various reasons, where we may develop multifamily affordable housing in response to the MBTA mandate, we may say, make it 40 feet there, essentially on 3A. Now, somebody brought that up with commercial buildings, and I've lived in this town for 30-something years, and I have not seen any commercial project try to exceed the 35-foot height limit. There just hasn't been the demand for it. But separate the number from the definition itself. These are 2 separate things. But again, there's a growing sentiment about maybe it makes sense to do it all at once. I'm somewhat concerned of how much if we kick down the road to the fall is going to be a full list, folks. I've got to tell you, it's going to be much more than 6 articles. And that's fine. There's reasons to do it both ways, but you know, let's not say this hasn't been studied, it hasn't been vetted, and there's arguments on both sides, and I get that, and that's why we're here. I'm just looking for your feedback if you think it's better to push it off to the front. That and the planning board's decision on that point tomorrow is going to be what the zoning bylaw committee decides at its next meeting.
Yeah, I think it's ground component of moving forward with the height revisions in the bylaw. as someone who's on the planning board, I agree with Tom, someone who's campaigned extensively. I think that a lot of people have a lot of concerns about overbuilding and massing in this town, particularly when you've got buildings that are starting to stray up to, 35 feet. And I think as it relates to affordable housing, keep in mind when you're looking at it for those big complexes, you're looking at 40B, but you're not going to be subject necessarily to our local bylaws. Our local bylaws or LIP projects, which I think that there's relief there, and Tom, correct me, but under a 40B or an LIP, you wouldn't necessarily need to conform to 35 feet anyway, like the preserve is 35 feet tall.
Remind me to look up how tall the
But
Avalon is, because I don't.
Exactly.
Yeah, 40B would
So-
override
so
it, but I don't know
it's
that it is.
Any substantial 40B project. that comes
Yeah.
into Cohasset. So.
I think we're all committed to the fact, and we look at multifamily and how to respond to the MBTA mandate. We're committed to being proactive in writing our own bylaw for what we want, not what 40B wants. So, again, that's where we will look at it and say, all right, is 35 feet going to make sense, or do we need to encourage 45, 50-foot tall structures on 3A to accommodate our multifamily needs? That's a debate we will have over the course of the summer when we lead into the fall town meeting with the changes to the table of area regulations. But
Diane and then Paul. By the way, just so everybody knows, I voted for the lower limit. On this one.
yeah, he was one of the three, and it was three of us. But
I want to make a motion so that somebody else has a question.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we refer Cohasset zoning bylaw articles 1, 2, 3, 6, 8, and 12 to the planning board for public hearings.
Do we have a second?
12 and 2.
What?
You were rattling off the bylaw article numbers. So it's 1, 3, 6, 8, 12, and 2
In the bylaw.
in the bylaw. Amendments to those articles of the bylaw. So it's 6 articles. in total.
Right?
Yes, we're referring it to the planning board.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. We have a motion made and seconded to refer the aforementioned articles to planning board. Is there any further discussion?
I did want to, the other kind of not third rail was the single log exemption. I just wanted to ask Tom to give us a little bit of a executive summary on, we pulled it last time, this time we're changing things, and why these changes are the appropriate things for our town. I just would like to hear that.
Okay, yeah. No, I'll-
The single log,
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think they are.
which one?
the single log exemption.
Oh, the single lot exemption. Which, by the way, at the forum, again, not extremely well attended, but well attended by the developer community, was not controversial.
Okay, okay.
Because it makes sense, because we're kind of constrained about what we can do and what we can't do. But in a nutshell, it's even difficult for lawyers to understand and explain, but the state law, chapter 48, section 6 says that if you are a 1 or 2 family zoned lot, and there is a change made in certain dimensional regulations, I believe it's frontage area setbacks. And you are not in common ownership with lots around you. And then case law deals with all the cute things people can do to avoid common ownership. You are perpetually grandfathered. Okay, the lot had to be in existence, recorded in the registry of deeds. You are perpetually grandfathered to be able to build on that lot. Okay. If you have the common ownership problem, where the doctrine of merger comes into effect, there are certain exceptions that allow you to still build. You had to act within a certain period of time, and then you have to have a minimum lot size. Okay. Cohasset's original bylaw in 1955, somewhat similar to what we're proposing today. The state law, chapter 48, section 6, has that cutoff as 5 years from the zoning change or 5 years from January 1, 1976. January 1, 1976 is important because that was the date that 40A went into effect. State zoning law completely revamped in 1975, went into effect on January 1, 1976. Okay, Cohasset, its original bylaw in 55, we found it last week. Actually had a cutoff that said, you know, it's the lots only that were created before 1955. So it took every lot that was legally created after 1955 out of this exception. All right, so then Cohasset, like most towns, after the state changed the law in 1975 and we did the whole zoning act, most town bylaws had to change. We did our change in 1978. When we rewrote the part about the single light exemption, what we did it. And a court has said this as late as 2017, with a project, a house development on Atlantic Avenue. We basically got rid of the merger doctrine, with the exception of when you have a common ownership problem. We got rid of any time constraint on it and any. So basically it was open-ended, that you could apply to build on that lot. What we did do in difference to the state law, though, we made our minimum lot size larger than the state law, which is good. So it means there isn't development on postage stamp lots. But the effect of that has been is that houses, lots that would have been cut off from development under the state law by itself are were able to be developed in Cohasset. And the latest example was something that came up in the mid 2010s, went to court and finally decided in 2017. Okay, and you wouldn't even recognize the house, you know, you wouldn't know this as something offensive or anything, but yet it was built on a smaller lot than we would have allowed because we in the town at some point said, you know, you need these minimum lot areas. So each town does that. So what then we discovered as we were going through this, and the first time we considered bringing this to town meeting, we thought about why don't we just repeal it? And the town of Orly, we learned about a case that was brought to our attention by a developer. And the town of Orleans at one point had a bylaw like ours. The lot in question would have been legal to build on under the Orleans bylaw in 1970. It became illegal to build on because of the repeal in 71. The court case didn't get to the Supreme Judicial Court until 2000, 30 years later. And the court said that if your town had once granted extra grandfathering rights, grandfathering is not the term anymore, but I'm going to use it, but you're stuck with that. You're stuck with that in perpetuity, that one-time grant, when you repealed it or amended your bylaw, the rights that once were held, get held in perpetuity under the first part of perpetual grandfather. So that told us we can't repeal it without, well, it tells us that anybody who has rights today under our current version of our bylaw, the single lot exemption, will still have.
Rents running with them.
Yes.
And that's the whole thing. It
Yes.
makes it move with the developer.
Right.
Carry.
So whether we amend it or so what do we do? So repeal doesn't make any sense. It's not accomplishing anything. The amendment that we're proposing is similar to the state law's exception, is put a date on it. Okay. Is put a date is that the lots have to be created as of record as of June 30, 2023. Okay. Essentially going back to what we had in 1955, when it said the lots had to be created on X date in 1955 to get the benefit. So what we are doing is cutting off the ability of new rights
Of people to carve out.
accruing in the future. So if somebody is creating new lots in a new subdivision that aren't going to go on record until after June 30th, 2023, those lots, if we then make a future zoning change, will never get the benefit of the single lot exemption unless they're not in common ownership.
So anybody have any further questions about this? We understand that.
It's the, out of curiosity, do you know how many lots exist?
No, we don't. And you know what, when we first discussed it, we thought it was 76. But it was done because members of the working group, we looked at the assessor's office and the way they categorize properties and the way the law categorizes the two different animals.
Okay, thank you.
You can't know until you study each property individually.
I'm good on the motion. That's
So,
Okay, well, is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, abstentions. Motion carried. Thank you, Tom.
all right, may I just, so Gene go forward on the height as it's written. You, I know, want to think we should postpone.
No,
I'm just
no,
trying
no.
I'm trying to get some guidance.
also-
So we refer, but whether.
You're referring the article, but I'm trying to get some guidance, Jack, for the next bylaw committee meeting.
Go forward.
Go forward.
I'll just do it on second.
Okay.
Right, I'm gonna go forward, but this is why we're in the public hearing process.
That is,
That fall meeting, so.
that is helpful. That is helpful, but there's, so, anyway.
I think getting something done.
Yeah, so, in terms of future meetings, just so you know, we're meeting with planning tomorrow, advisory the 15th, zoning the 21st. I assume we have to be ready to go to print by early April. Chris maybe can tell me that, but
Okay,
your definitive vote, I would appreciate if it was before we go to print so that we can have any changes in print. Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. No, I appreciate it.
okay, thank you, Tom.
Thank you, John.
Moving on, is there anybody? Nobody's.
No,
All right, so, I think this is a very helpful to understand that how the board preliminarily feels about this. Town manager is here. Update.
So due to the lateness of the hour and the fact that we've been meeting every week, I don't have much to report tonight. That said, what I will say is the advisory committee and capital have been meeting regularly. CPC met Monday last night. Capital meets tomorrow, advisory meets tomorrow. And I think so far everything's on target. So CPC met on town hall, and next week they meet on the field proposal and the playground at Beechwood. So they're going to hear those next Monday. And advisory is on target with their reviews. Tomorrow they go through budgets again, and they do a look at the proposal you folks have from Tom Hickey about the South Shore Road Tech update. So the warrant's progressing smoothly. We're on target.
Is that it? Very good, thank you, Chris. Okay. So I think we don't have any minutes, approval of minutes. I think we'll do the approval of minutes before the select board comments. Do we have any thoughts on the minutes?
Just jumped out, what's the date?
We're looking at 227, 12-1, and 216.
Yes, I think 12-1 and 216, 2020, 2021, only the three numbers that are remaining on the board to vote on. So I'll move those.
Yeah.
I move that we approve 12-1, 2020 and 216, 2021.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Can't second. You're right there.
Second.
Diane second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Two abstentions.
Um,
I move to approve the 2/7/2023 minutes.
Second.
You weren't here 3 years ago. Maybe you were. Backdating votes would be awesome.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Select board comments. We will start. Corey. Diane.
Yeah, for everyone that's still watching, which is 0 people, but I just want to do a shout out for the Cohasset Library. They had this awesome, they brought in these mini putt greens, mini golf greens inside the library. It was like a 12, 14 hole course as a fundraiser for the outdoor project. My family did it. It was awesome. I volunteered over it. It was just so nice. Bringing in a bunch of people that had never even been in the library, people that lived in town forever. Like, oh, what a great library. It was an awesome way to showcase just a beautiful place with a children's room and computers and just everything you need at a great library. So shout out to the entire library team. Also focus on, if everyone goes to CohassetLibrary.org, you can take a look at the exterior The atrium plan is going on, there's still fundraising going on, I'm just pointing out that there's fundraising going on, and then there's still a gap to make that project happen, so check it out. At your convenience. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Diane.
I just want to congratulate the town manager on his adoption of a new pup, our new dog. Why he looks so tired. So good luck.
There you go. Look at it, looks
What's her name?
So she's still socializing. So she's scared of lots of things like my ceiling fan, but she seems to love the couch. So that's something, right? So her name is Kayla, spelled in the Irish Gaelic way, Cadhla. So no one can pronounce it, but it's Kayla.
That's great.
It's great.
Not good tonight.
Great.
I think that next week, hopefully, I'm gonna suggest that we do a proclamation to make Cohasset a purple park community. I think that would be a nice thing. And so everyone think about it and hopefully we can get that done.
I didn't hear. Oh, yeah. Was nothing done yet?
No, not yet.
Well done.
Thank you, Chief. Again, the work that this board is doing, and I hope people will recognize that. And behind every time you see out here, there's countless hours by the boards and committees to get us to where we can make decisions. So well done to all the volunteers and all the boards and committees in this town. Democracy at work is great. And I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
We have a motion made to adjourn and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That was- We're adjourned.